Hello and welcome back to MPB's boot camp for the math portion of the ACT. I am Miss Killen, here to make sure that you get the best possible ACT score that you can. We are on lesson 17, so let's go ahead and dive into it. We are looking at back solving. And Miss Killen, what is that? I'm going to show you. It's how we work backwards. So here we go. So I wrote down exactly what it is. So I'm just going to give you a little description about what back solving is. It basically relies for a multiple choice test, which obviously your ACT is. There is one and only one correct answer for the question item if you work backwards using the numerical answers. You can only have one possible answer. Some students are taught this with different types of math. Maybe different teachers teach you with this type of problem, just work backwards. You can get the answer, stuff like that. So there is a method to the madness, so to speak. The answers are generally in ascending or descending order. So if you can work those backwards logically, you will be able to find those possible answers through the multiple choice by eliminating the ones that could not possibly be the answer. Now, you cannot always use this back solving. Sometimes you just cannot because of the type of question or maybe the type of content, maybe the type of format that they've asked the question. So I want you to know that this possible strategy cannot always be used, but it is a strategy that you can use on that ACT. So let's look at some answer choices and see what we've got. So it says that Hyatt has $1,000 available to buy USB drives to back up data for the business computers. Each USB drive has a price of $8, and Hyatt will pay the sales tax of 7% of the total price of the USB drives. What is the maximum number of USB drives that can be bought? All right, so this is an example. This is a great example of how we can make the items more concrete by solving the items involved with this math technique. So we have the total cost, and we're just going to call that T. And then we've got a price plus our tax. Okay, so that's what we are looking for. And we know that we've got $100 that we can use, and our tax is going to be 7%. So this is the information that we know that we've got to use. So the first thing I'm going to do is look at what 7% of the $8 is. Now, this is a simple calculator skill. You take this percentage and you make it into that decimal and you multiply it by 8. Simple, simple. So for every time that they buy one, you're going to have 56 cents. Simple enough. So my total cost is 8.056. So I've got $8.56. All right. So I'm going to start with B. 12 or 11. No, B is 12. Sorry, excuse me. I'm going to start with B, which is 12 times that 856, which is $102.32, which is too high. So since the next largest number, which is 12, is too much, then I know exactly it has to be A. Now, Ms. Killen, why did you jump to 12? Why didn't you just use 11? Okay, so they are in an order. They keep progressively getting larger. So since this is a small one, if I go to the next number, which is a little bit bigger, if this one don't work, none of these will work either. So if this one don't work, the only logical choice by working backwards would be 11 as my answer. So that's why I jumped to 12. So there's reasons why we use this backwards answering. There is a logical way to use this working backwards. So when you see your answers are in an order, so you go to the next largest one, and if it is too big or too small, depending on how your question asks you, then you can either go backwards or you can go forwards. So there is a way to use this. All right, so let's look at the next one. All right, so here it is. The size of the square is 3 centimeters long. Our vertex of the square is 3, 0. On a square coordinate grid marked in centimeter units, which of the following points could also be the vertex of the square? So let me go ahead and get my board erased, and then we can look at that. Now, some things that we need to know is if the item was not multiple choice, We might have to do some plotting on a coordinate grid or this, that, and the other. So you also need to remember that you can do some of this backwards working, but it's easier for when the questions are multiple choice. So we would plot at the 3, 0, which you know on here would be here. So then the next thing that we're going to do is think about what the square means. So I know a square, 3 centimeters long, right? So that means if my coordinate is 3 centimeters, I'm going to go back here, so I could have 0, 0. I would go up here, which also would be, 0, 3. And then I could also go up here and be 3, 3. So that could be my square. Now, I don't see any of those on there. I don't see anything. So possibly there's another way that we could work backwards. So when we examine these answer choices, we look at A and it looks like it could be logical. Okay, looks like it could be. So let's look at some more. It says that the point 0.06 gives another vertex of a square with a horizontal sides of 3 centimeters. We know this could be right, but I don't want to just throw out that -3, as well. All right, so we got to note that it could possibly be one of our vertex. Now you're saying, Ms. Killen, why just those two? Why couldn't B or C? Well, if we have 4.5, then if we know that this was one of our vertexes, for us to get to that 4.5 and that 1.5, we're not going to be able to use the length as 3 centimeters. Or if we're using that 0, -2, we're not going to be able to use that rule of one of our sides being 3 centimeters. So A and D would be more of the logical choices, is why I skipped those two. All right, so we know that A could be a logical choice. We know this. So then we have to look at, we have to note that choice D would give us a square with the length sides of 6 centimeters. Okay, so we don't really see how we could have the -3 here, because then it would have to be 6 all the way across, because we've got to keep this as one of our vertex. So if we have this 6, 0 here, I could possibly make a square like that. So now we see the representation of why working backwards, because if I'm over here in the negatives and I have to use this 3, 0, there's no way that my square can be that long, because it has to have the side length of 3 centimeters. So that's how we can look at this question and work backwards. So obviously my answer is what? It's A. Good job. All right, now these were just a couple of questions that showed us how we could use that backwards working or back solving. A lot of times, like I said, you can take those answer choices and plug them into the operations or look at the graphs or what have you to see if those could be logical choices. So you always want to make sure that you are looking and trying to figure out how I can use these to work backwards to the beginning. So always practicing them to make sure that you're understanding how those operations work. So, as always, make sure that you're practicing to get those best possible scores, to work with all that content and context. So, as always, I am Ms. Killen. Have a great day.